Okay, everybody, welcome to the number 27 on the greatest checkmates of all time, or at least my favorite greatest checkmates of all time. And this one I actually used to do quite a bit. I did for some time, and I was pretty successful with it for a while. And let me kind of get to the board here for the white side. And it's one that you've all seen before. It's one that's quite famous. So let's take a look at this. White plays e4, black plays e5, queen h5. Now I bet you know what checkmate's this going to be. The very famous Scholar's Mate. Scholar's Mate, also in Indiana known as the Parham attack, named after the great master Bernie Parham, who unfortunately passed away a few months ago. The Scholar's Mate is famous for its 3 or maybe 4 move checkmate. Knight c6, bishop to c4. Look at the threat on f7. Maybe they move you away with g6, but they might not even do that. They might just play something like knight f6, threatening the queen. And then queen takes f7 checkmate. And there it is, the Scholar's Mate. There's probably more wins with the Scholar's Mate than any other checkmate, even more than the Fool's Mate. So let's take a look at it again, and maybe from another angle. Let's say that the queen goes to f3, and then black plays knight c6. Again, bishop c4, both pieces aiming at that f7 square. Perhaps black thinks, oh, I'll threaten the queen and this pawn. And now, do you guys see the move? Pause the video if you need a break, and then come back if you know the checkmate for white. If you said queen f7, you were correct. Queen f7 would checkmate. They cannot take because of the bishop. So how do you deal with this Scholar's Mate? Well, there's a few different ways, and they're all pretty good ways. Let me go ahead and flip the board. Let's say you're playing black, and your opponent plays the Scholar's Mate, queen h5. Well, the first thing you might want to do is guard that pawn. He's threatening it. So queen or knight c6, bishop to c4, and now block that queen from checking. Pawn to g6. Now the queen or white could make a big mistake here and play after pawn to g6, he could go queen to f3 or h3. Now after queen to h3, what is a fantastic move that black could make? And this would threaten 2 pieces at once. Go ahead and pause the video. All right, if you came back with, or you decided pawn to d5, you were correct. You're threatening both the bishop on c4, threatening to take it, and maybe more importantly, you're threatening the queen, threatening to take that queen with your bishop. Now, what if white plays something a little better and plays queen f3? They're still threatening checkmate. Well, then you can just move your knight out to block. Pretty simple. And you could do other things too. You could always get your queen involved and play queen e7 or queen f6. Notice how the knight is guarding the queen. All right, let's try it a different way. Let's pretend the queen comes out here to h5. And this is a simple way I like to play against the Scholar's Mate. Queen f6. If they're going to bring their queen out, you can bring yours, and you're doing it with the purpose of protecting this e5 square and also protecting the f7 a little bit. So now when they play bishop to c4, they're not really threatening anything because you have your king and, you have your king and your queen guarding that square. So that does pretty well for you. So there's one other way I want to show you, and this is more for advanced players. If somebody plays the Scholar's Mate on you and you're pretty advanced, you could try this way. You first bring the knight out to c6, and they threaten bishop c4 with checkmate on f7. Now you play g6, but when they come back to f3, check out this crazy move. Pawn to f5. Pawn f5 is actually threatening to play knight d4 now without the queen checkmating. If they take it, knight to d4, threatening the queen and that pawn. Now, if they play queen to e3, that's really awesome if they play queen to e3. What would you guys do here if they played queen e3? Stop the video if you see it. If you said knight c2 family fork, you were definitely right. That's an easy, good move. But if they play a little better, let's pretend they play something like queen d5, threatening checkmate again. I actually like queen f6, and I think black has a good game out of this. You're still threatening knight takes c2. And they could also play queen d1 and say, okay, you got me, I'm going all the way back. Then I love this move, pawn to d5, threatening the bishop. And then you're probably, in most cases, if they do that, you're going to take on f5. But let me just add a move here. What if they make kind of a silly move and they check you? What's the best move here for black? Go ahead and pause the video if you see it. All right, if you said knight takes bishop, you were correct. So that is the scholar's mate, and even though there's all these good ways to play it, there's probably more checkmates with the scholar's mate than any other opening. Any of my beginning chess classes, you'll have kids raising the king and say, oh, I checkmated Johnny again. So I would recommend learning how to play against it. And even though it looks fun to play, it doesn't serve the right opening principles of developing your minor pieces. Minor pieces are bishops and knights, remember. All right, guys, I can't wait for number 26, which is coming up, and 25. They will be very exciting. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next Checkmate.